everyone. I'm Nikki Shaw, the YA librarian at the Fairbanks Branch Library. Today we have an author coming to join us. She'll be here just a second. I have to add her on. She is a YA author, so if you're interested, stay around and chat with us. Hang on, let me add her. Just a second. Okay, it says waiting. We're going to let her finish.
Oh, it's working. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Hi, Nikki.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to
Hi.
meet you. This is my first time doing this live thing this way, so I'm glad that it worked.
This is only my second time and it's still just as confusing. So,
Excellent. Well, thank you for having me.
okay, so I kind of introduced myself. So I'm going to throw the floor to you and you can introduce yourself.
Okay. I'm Lisa Schroeder. I'm the author of, I try to, sometimes people make fun of me because I don't remember how many books I've written. And it's just because every year I add one and I just lose count. But I think I'm up to like 21, 22. And I think about 7 of those are YA novels. And I guess we should say Happy Poetry Month, right? Because I don't know if
Yeah.
that's what prompted the verse novel interest. But yeah, I Heart You, You Haunt Me is the first one that I wrote and still the most popular. It's still selling, which is amazing. And Chasing Brooklyn is sort of a companion novel that I wrote because so many people liked this one and wanted a sequel. But my editor was like, we left her in a good place, but what if you made a short but sweet appearance in another book about love and loss? And so that's what I ended up doing. And The Day Before is another one. I just grabbed a few to have here. And The Bridge from Me to You is one that is part verse, part prose, and it alternates between male and female, so that's a good one. Sometimes it has some football in it, so that's a good one sometimes to hand to boys who might be looking for something to read of mine. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so we have some questions that I'll ask while we wait on other people to
Sure.
ask questions, and I have some just in case if anybody's shy and don't want to ask their own question or so.
Yes.
Okay, so basic questions. What made you decide that you wanted to be an author?
Yeah, it's such a hard question, actually. It seems like it should be easy, but I think I always had it in the back of my mind as something that interests you. But what happens often is we have these dreams that what we then hear this voice in our head that's like, you didn't go to school to do that. You're not smart enough to do that. What makes you think that you would be successful at that? And I was reading a book a long time ago that explained that voice that we hear when we have a dream of something that we would love to do and try. That voice is actually our ego that is trying to protect us from failing. And as soon as I thought of it that way and realized that I don't know for sure if I'm going to fail until I try, it made me want to try. And so, and I've learned, throughout life that oftentimes what happens is when you take one step forward to pursue a dream that you have, you often then find that doors open in ways that you never could dream of. And I remember I was at a barbecue one day and was telling a woman, I've been writing these stories. I don't know if they're any good. And she's like, oh my gosh, I write too. And She's like, if you ever want me to read anything, and it just, and so she did, and she gave me some comments, and like those were really, really early manuscripts that nothing ever, happened with them. But it was just, it was like the universe saying, saying, keep taking those steps, keep moving forward, keep trying. And I had to learn, the publishing industry is this huge, complicated business that sometimes I get emails from kids that'll say, how do you get published? And I'm like, well, let me give you some titles of books that you can check out, that you can go and read, because it's not, you have to get an agent. Like there's all these steps. And basically what I tell kids is, the most important thing is to read a lot and to write a lot and practice, 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 because writing is like anything. It's like a sport or a musical instrument, anything. The more you do it, the better you get at it. And so those early books I think of as my schooling, because like I said, I didn't go to school to learn how to be an author. I went to school and majored in business because that's what my mom said I should do to be able to support myself if I needed to. So I'm just really glad that I sort of, had I guess it takes some courage to sort of keep trying, because what happens in publishing is you get rejected all the time. I still get rejected after 20 whatever books. It's just part of being an author. And so, so I'm glad that I kept going, because I had hundreds of rejections early on from agents and editors. But I think eventually I realized, and this has to be true, you have to love the act of writing. It can't just be about being published. You have to love writing. And I really do love writing. And so that's kind of how it started for me, was to finally just not listen to those voices anymore that were telling me I couldn't do it, and just try and see what happened.
Cool. Good advice. Thank you.
Yeah.
The other one I have is, so what type of research goes into your writing or into your books?
I mean, some of them a lot, and some of them not so much. It kind of depends. It's funny, I wrote a middle grade book called My Secret Guide to Paris. I had never actually been to Paris, but I really, really wanted to go. And I was like, well, maybe until I get there, I'll just write a book about it, and I can visit it every day when I'm writing. And so I used like travel blogs were really big for that one. I checked out books from the library about Paris, both fictional and nonfiction books that would, give me a flavor of Paris. I used Google Earth a lot, and I just a few weeks ago, Kate Messner has a list of resources for parents and teachers where authors have made videos and done do readings or writing exercises. And I read a little portion of My Secret Guide to Paris and said, if you want to visit somewhere right now where you're stuck at home, you can visit, read books that are set in different places, and you can visit in your imagination and go to Paris basically through my book. And then I had them do a writing exercise that is, where's somewhere that you would love to visit? And then look up pictures of that place and do Google Earth, maybe see if you can get down on the street. Like I literally traveled the streets of Paris while I was writing that book. And that's how I was able to fill in some of the details, because kids ask me a lot about details. And even I remember when I would volunteer in my kids' classrooms, coming up with details when they're writing is really hard. And so and it's hard for me too. It's one of the reasons I like writing in verse so much, because verse, you oftentimes can sort of get to the emotional heart of the story, and it doesn't require as many details. But looking up pictures and just being able to see what you're writing can help kids so much, I think. And I think they forget that that's an option. I mean, obviously, if you're doing an assignment right at your desk in school and you don't have a computer, but at home or whatever, like it even is just helps kind of hone those skills of coming up with descriptions that can be good for them. So, research is when it has to be done, it's usually, I think, for setting mostly for me, because most of my books are realistic fiction.
Mm-hmm.
So, there isn't, I'm trying to think of any of them, any of my books. I mean, when I was writing I Heart You, You Haunt Me, I was like, it's about a girl whose boyfriend dies
Mm-hmm.
and he loves her so much that he doesn't want to leave. And so I was adding in all these things that ghosts might do, but I'm like, wait, I don't know. Is this what ghosts would do? How can I research ghosts? And so like, and I don't even really like scary things. Like you won't find me watching any of those, when the month of October, I literally like pause on the scary commercials so I don't have to watch them. So I didn't want anything too scary. And he wasn't scared. She wasn't necessarily scared. She's not necessarily scared of him. She's actually glad that he's there. Like neither of them want to let each other go, kind of. But I sort of was like, is this realistic for a ghost? So I would watch some ghost shows and do a little Googling of, do ghosts like change, do the music, if you're listening to a radio station, might they put a certain song on or whatever. But I honestly, like, I sort of sometimes turn the radio on and like a song that I really need to hear at that moment will be playing. And I'm like, okay, thank you, Grandma. I really needed to hear that song. Like, so I don't know. So I sort of just went with my gut as to what might work for ghosts. But yeah, I did a little ghost research for that. Not too much though, just enough.
That actually kind of takes us to our next question, or my next question, I
Okay.
guess. How different is it to write novels in verse versus novels written in prose?
Yeah. I get that question a lot. And I think that for me, not every book is going to work in verse. I had written a bunch of manuscripts before I wrote this one that were in prose. And what happened with this one was I had a dream that never happens. I wish it would happen again because it was just the coolest thing. Like I had a dream about a girl whose boyfriend died. I didn't know how he died, and I just woke up with like this strong sense of love. And I remember I came to the computer. That this was when I was working full time, and I would get up early in the morning and write before I went to work. And I remember getting up and I had just read some Ellen Hopkins and Sonia Sones. And so verse was sort of on my mind, but it really wanted to come out in this sort of sparse, poetic way. And when I finally got my agent, took a long, oh, it was not easy finding an agent who would take on verse. This was before Kwame Alexander made verse really cool, honestly. And I mean, Ellen Hopkins and Sonia Sones did a lot of work, but man, I feel like Kwame just really elevated how people see verse. But so what I learned when my agent said that she loved it, finally I found an agent for it. She said in her email, she said, I think the verse created an atmosphere for this story that you couldn't have gotten with regular prose. So there sort of has to be, and some people will argue with me about this, maybe, but I think there should be a reason that you write in verse. Either you want it to be, atmospheric, like this is a ghost story, so there are parts in it where it's really atmospheric for that kind of thing. You maybe have set it in a place where you can be really poetic about the place, or or you do something with art or music where you can just sort of play with the structure of it and all of that. I mean, the thing with verse novels is you still have to have an interesting story. So story is always going to be first. And then beyond that, it needs to be poetic because it is written in this verse kind of format. So but you still have to have a story that keeps them turning the pages. And that's why sometimes I think people, when you early on, you would say it's written in verse, and people would be like, what does that mean? Is it going to be hard to read? And it's actually the opposite. Like, I
Mhm.
have so many reluctant readers that write to me. I mean, I remember I had one
Mhm.
mom who had someone who had a learning disability, and she said, I just have you to know that a miracle just occurred in my living room because your novel is the first one that she's ever finished. And I would get letters like that all the time from people about how they're reluctant readers, or kids will write to me and say, I hate to read, but I love your books. And I'm like, so you don't really hate to read. You
Mhm.
just are more particular. And now you
Mhm.
know what kind of books you like, and you can go to
Mhm.
your librarian and you can say, I guess I like first novels. Can you recommend more for me? Because I just always hate that idea that they, in their mind, they think they hate to read. It wasn't that. They just had to find a book that works for them, and
Right.
hopefully over time they will be able to. They'll
Mhm.
do verse a lot, and then they'll move into other kinds of things. But for so many, they like the blank, the lots of blank space that
Mhm.
before they know it, they've read pages and pages, and
Mhm.
it's not hard. It's not like, I think sometimes for reluctant readers it can feel like slogging through a book, and the
Right.
pages fly and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm reading a novel. So it's really, for me, it has to have a reason to be verse, and I think the atmosphere that the verse creates is a huge part of that. If there's going to be a
Mhm.
lot of dialogue, verse isn't going to work, because dialogue is not poetic, realistic dialogue anyway. Like this
Mhm.
dialogue that you and I are having, like if I was trying to make this poetic, it would be really, really hard. Yeah, so those are sort of the main reasons.
Awesome. Good to know. Okay, so now we're going to open it up to everybody else. If you have a question, you can go ahead and type it in the comment section, and I'll ask it as they come in. Um, while we're waiting on them, I want to ask you a question that we asked Becky Wallace, who we had last time. Um, and everybody thought the question was, or her answer was hilarious.
Uh-oh.
So we want to ask you as well.
Okay.
Um, so, what is the funniest typo you've ever written?
And she remembered that.
I think because she said her editor thought it was hilarious and like went out of her way to email her and tell her about
Uh-huh. Oh, I'm not going to have a good answer for that. I'm sorry. I mean, I can see where if you had something that happened that you would be like, whoops. And honestly, I feel like any kind of big mistakes like that, I try to erase from my memory as fast as possible. I don't think I'm going to have a good idea thing for that. Sorry. What was her answer though? We want to know. I want to know.
it. Okay, she said she was trying to say like it was two characters together, a boy and a girl, and he shifted next to her,
Uh-oh.
and yeah, she said
Yeah.
she forgot the F. Yeah, that's funny.
The F was left out. I'm imagining. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and she said her editor emailed her and was like,
Is
what?
did you mean this? Yeah.
Yeah. So everyone after that, everyone was laughing in the comments and was asking, can we ask the next author that as well? So they thought it was a good question. That's why.
Yeah. I know. I'm sure I'll think of something, this afternoon as I'm making dinner or something.
Okay, so let me see. Um, if you had the opportunity to live in any of your book settings, which one would you choose?
Oh, most definitely My Secret Guide to Paris. I would
Mhm.
I would love to live in Paris. I follow all these Paris Instagram accounts, and like the other night when we had the big full moon, someone filmed a video of the skyline in Paris and like paired it with Claire de Lune, which is one of my favorite songs, and I just was I just wanted to be transported there so bad in that moment. Like it was just so beautiful. So yeah, that without a doubt. And you know, I don't say a lot about things that I'm working on when they're new because I found it's like a balloon, and the more you share, it sort of you lose the helium, and you need that heat. You need the excitement and
Mhm.
all of that with the book that you're working on to take it to the page, and you don't want to let
Mhm.
any of that helium out. And one little what, or you know, a questionable look as you're describing it will like deflate that balloon like that. And so I'm really careful, but I need something to work on right now in all of this, and I haven't been writing for like the past 4 weeks. I'm like, I need something like that Paris book. Or I remember I wrote It's Raining Cupcakes in 2009. And I specifically remember I was coming home from work, and I was like at a stop sign, and I was like, I have got to write about something happy because we were
Mhm.
in this horrible recession. I was doing these layoffs at work that were just, it was a nightmare. And I'm like, I need a book that makes me happy. So what, and I started just brainstorming what are things that make me and people happy. And I was like, kittens, puppies, rainbows. And then I was like, cupcakes. Wait, that was when the cupcake business was just starting to boom, you know.
Mhm.
And so it was so fun to just like in my imagination go in this cute little cupcake shop as I was writing. So right now I'm in France again. I won't tell you where, but I needed a place to visit right now that would take me away from this reality. so, um, so I'm visiting France again somewhere. I won't tell you exactly where, but yeah, that's
Cool.
one of the best parts about writing is, and I've heard editors say that too, that the setting is really can be important. It can be another character almost sometimes, and that you
Mhm.
should take advantage of that and use an interesting setting as much as you can.
Yes, that's very true. I don't travel a lot. Well, I mean, I do travel, but I don't travel a lot to
Yeah,
places like far, really far.
right,
So that's how I do travel through reading.
right.
So I
Yeah.
understand that completely. Let's see. What is your most unusual writing quirk?
Um, well, I have a Robert Downey Jr. Big, tall, cutout. And so if I'm feeling I really need some motivation, I set it in my office, and then I feel like he's cheering me on. I actually did a, a lip sync video with him sitting in my in the passenger seat, and it's so funny. I was like, I had to promote a book, and I didn't want to do any like normal boring things. So I'm like, I'm just gonna do a video with Robert in the passenger seat, and we're just gonna sing a song. Like, oh, and then another book. Our friends have a really cool old vintage VW bus, and so my husband, like, he just went crazy and had set Robert up with stacks of books in front of him, and just it was so funny. But it made some great like Instagram photos, you know. But anyway, so I'll say that like sometimes I need a little cheering on from Robert Downey Jr. So I'm like, okay, time to bring the cutout out, and I'll just set it in my office for a while. And people will walk by, like we live, kind of on a corner, and so there's lots of foot traffic, and people sometimes will walk by, and I can see them like, who is that? What is that?
Oh my God, I would love to see their
I
faces.
know.
Let's see. So, have you ever had writer's block, and what do you do to combat it?
Yeah, I've heard authors talk differently about writer's block. I'm of the camp that I don't really think there is such a thing. I think what happens is you write yourself into a corner and you don't know how to get out. And so oftentimes, like for example, on and off for 5 years, I worked on my first adult novel that hopefully will be going out on submission soon. We'll see. It's a historical novel, and it takes place during the golden age of Hollywood. That was another fun book to write.
Mm.
I turned it in like shortly before this all happened. And that was part of, I think, my sadness. I'm like, I don't have that book to visit anymore. Like, I really
Mhm.
enjoyed that setting. But at one point, I stopped working on it for like 6 months. And I had kind of turned it into like, the 13 going on 30, or like where they switch places,
Mhm.
And I was like, and I didn't work on it for the longest time, and then I finally realized, no, that is not what this book is meant to be. So I had to delete a bunch of pages and take it back to where it would just be a straight up like historical fiction novel and not have these fantasy elements kind of thing. And then I was able to work on it again. So
Mhm.
I think sometimes it's because, and I think this is harder for people who, some people say plotting versus pantsing, writing by the seat of your pants. I like to call it discovery writing. So that book that I wrote was total discovery writing. I didn't outline or anything. Sometimes I outline, sometimes I don't. And that particular one, I just started it as something fun, and I didn't really want it to be a lot of like work plotting and all that. But that's the downside of when you don't plot, is then you may take a wrong turn and you have to back up and do other things. So you have to be willing to do that if you're not going
Mhm.
to do an outline or really plot somehow um, regularly. So yeah, so that's kind of my feeling about it. Is it's not necessarily, it's because you've written yourself somewhere that you don't know where to go. And so the best thing you can do is, okay, go back a ways and see if deleting something will help you. Okay, now let's try going somewhere different here, and then that often will help. So yeah.
Okay, so you said that you are a discovery writer and not a plotter. Can
For
you
the most
elaborate?
part.
Okay.
Because sometimes, well, for example, I did 4 books for Scholastic in a short amount of time. They wanted me to do the series in a year. And there was no way I could do that unless I like did detailed outlines, so that every time I knew, when I sat down, I knew what I was going to write and how the
Mhm.
book would go. But for a lot of my YAs, for some reason, I start out with sort of what I call a few seeds of ideas. So, for example, my book Far From You is a good example. I wanted to do something Alice in Wonderland based. I love Alice in Wonderland for some reason. So I wanted my character to either be interested in it or, um, have it play a part in a story somehow. So that was one seed. Another seed was this true story that happened where this family was traveling from Washington to California or vice versa. I don't remember. And a huge snowstorm came, and they took these back roads in Oregon, and they ended up getting lost and stuck. And
Mhm.
and I thought snow would be really poetic. So I was doing another novel in verse. So I'm like, I could do something with stuck in a snowstorm and have it be, poetic. So I had
Mhm.
Alice in Wonderland, I had the snowstorm, and then I wanted to do a singer songwriter. So my main character was a singer songwriter, and there are actually songs sprinkled throughout that she writes and obviously performs, but you don't get to hear her perform. But you can read the songs that I wrote for her. I
Oh, wow.
actually think as part of the promotion, I put one, somebody helped me put it to music, and that was when I was playing guitar still. And I think I deleted it, but as I got older, I'm like, maybe I don't want that up on the internet for everyone to see. But I actually performed one of the songs I wrote. But yeah, so that's what I mean when you're discovery writing, like you have kind of these seeds, you plant them, and then you just kind of see how it grows. And a lot of times, halfway through, I will have to stop and do some plotting and make sure I'm going somewhere that seems logical. But it's kind of just fun, more fun. Like right
Mhm.
now, I need writing to be fun. I don't need it to be work until maybe my editor gets back to me or I sell something. that is out on submission, and then that becomes work because I'm going to be paid for it, and then you do the hard work. But right now, for distracting me from what's going on, like I have a few seeds of ideas. I'm going to see where they go, and it's just letting it, it's sort of like playing in a sandbox. You just play, and then at the point where, okay, I want this lump of something to actually be professional to enter a sandcastle contest, then you get down to work and really do the work that you need to do. But the first draft, I think one of the things I tell kids is I get so many letters from them that say, so I've started a book, I've written a couple chapters, and I'm worried no one will like it. And I'm like, you know what? You're not writing for anyone else right now. You are writing for you. And so just have fun with it. Just play. Don't worry about anyone else reading it right now, because no one else is. It's just you. Now, at some point, you will need to share it with someone. That's part of writing, and get feedback and learn how to take constructive feedback. But right now, for the first draft, just keep going. One of the biggest things, and even my son was working on a novel, and he's been working on it for like years, and he keeps like starting over. And one of the biggest things that we can help kids learn is to finish it. I don't care if it's bad, but you need to see that you can do something with a beginning, a middle, and an end. Right. And then you then have something to work with. And yes, maybe you end up deleting half of it, but at least show yourself and prove yourself that you can finish a draft from beginning to end. Because so many, that's what's hard, is finishing something. You can play around with the first 2 chapters forever, but finish something, and that's the big deal. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
That actually takes us to our 30 minutes.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for doing this. I can't believe it's already been 30 minutes.
I know, you're welcome. Well, and hope it'll stay up if people want to come find it or whatever yes. later, right? Yeah. So they can watch it later. So that'll be great. Well, thank you so much for having me. I hope you are doing okay. It looks like you're working from home mostly?
Yes, working Hopefully. From home. This is my home library. It's it's kind of messy. So
it's lovely. Oh, sure. You're welcome. Sue, thanks for joining us. And thanks to everybody who watched.
And I just want to say again, thank you so much for coming. We talked with our collection development team, and we're trying to get the novels that you do have available as ebooks to add it to our collection. I spoke with them last week. They're trying to get them there so that we can get, the teens and stuff are able to check out your material.
And read them on their Kindles or whatever, yeah. The hard thing is sometimes the ebooks for verse novels are a little bit not as nice as reading them in book form. I haven't tried it. I probably should download my own and see, because I'm always curious about that. But I think it works. It's just not as nice as having and someday the library will be open again and they can come in and see you and check them out too. So
yeah, we have some on our shelf. It's just now that we're closed. It's really hard for them. So
I know.
Trying to I spoke with collection development, and they're in the process of getting it. So we'll have them soon.
Excellent. Thank you so much. All right. Bye. Talk to you later. Bye.
All right, and that is the end of the interview today. I hope you guys enjoyed. Hopefully we'll see you again. I'm not going to say yes or no to that. I'm just going to say hopefully. Bye.